This story is titled, "My Cousin Refused to Help Me When I Was Sick Because He Had His Own Life. But I Stopped Paying His Rent, and Now He's in a Panic." I'm 28, and I let my 25-year-old cousin Eric live with me for 5 months without asking him to pay a cent for rent or utilities. I know this might bother some people, but we grew up in a very different environment. We come from a very small town near Omaha, where there's still a strong sense of community culture. We even host neighbors and acquaintances if they visit the city. I understand that this may sound strange to some people. 5 months ago, Eric called me, saying he was moving to the city to start his career as a photographer. He had just graduated from university, with no job or place to live. He had done some odd jobs in our town, but that didn't count as experience in the field he wanted to pursue. He asked if he could stay in my apartment until he could find a job and get on his feet. I was happy to accept without asking any more questions. This is just how we are, where we come from. When we were kids, I knew Eric as a passionate and hardworking boy. Later, he moved away to attend high school, and we lost the daily closeness, though we kept in touch during visits home. Still, you really get to know someone when you live with them. Eric arrived with 2 large suitcases filled with cameras and equipment. I was impressed that he had so much gear to pursue his career. It seemed like he was prepared and still the same responsible kid I remembered. We made sure he slept on the couch. He kept his things in a corner and always promised, "This is only temporary. I'll move as soon as I get a job." I didn't mind. I was dating at the time but living alone, and I didn't have many friends in the city. I had moved here for university and stayed after landing my first job. Having Eric around felt like having family again. We had a lot to catch up on. We spent afternoons and weekends talking, and he filled me in on all the gossip about relatives and neighbors I'd missed after moving. Only people from small towns will understand the comfort of such updates. Weeks passed, and he began to get used to city life. I considered him my roommate, though I paid for almost everything: rent, utilities, and even groceries. I occasionally brought home takeout. Sometimes he'd chip in, but he didn't have much money, so it wasn't frequent. Honestly, it was fun living with him. We watched games together, went out to the movies, and just enjoyed each other's company during weekends and holidays. A month passed, then 2, then 3. He picked up a few odd jobs here and there, but nothing solid enough to call it a career. One day, he told me he was close to landing a great opportunity, but needed a portfolio. Unfortunately, he didn't have the money to rent the necessary equipment. He asked me for help, and I handed him $500 to support his aspirations. Even after that, when his career didn't take off and he started feeling anxious about his future, I helped him get a part-time job at a local cafe through one of my acquaintances. However, Eric only lasted 2 weeks before quitting, saying, "I can't serve coffee for the rest of my life. I have bigger things ahead of me." I found it strange. While I understood his desire to focus on his dreams, a job is a job. Despite his setbacks, I didn't give up on him. I continued supporting him in every way I could. With my stable job and good income, I wanted the same stability for Eric. I helped him when he needed money to buy a new tool. I assisted him in setting up a YouTube channel and Instagram page, spending hours writing descriptions and captions. I did all this without expecting anything in return. Usually, I'd receive a thank you and a big smile, and for me, that was enough. All I wanted was for Eric's career to eventually take off. I'm not going to lie, I like helping other people thrive. The 3 of us, Eric, Lisa, and I, spent time together at first, but then Eric stopped joining us, saying he didn't want to be a nuisance. After Lisa's roommate moved out, we started spending more time at her house because we had more privacy there. In the last few months, I've practically lived at Lisa's house. I haven't completely moved out of my apartment yet. I still have things there, things I don't use regularly. Sometimes I stop by the apartment on my way home from work and spend time with Eric. But things have gotten really weird. I recently noticed that Eric had taken over my bedroom. I didn't make a fuss because I barely live there, but I still pay rent. The reason I haven't completely moved in with Lisa is because we haven't discussed our future yet. We don't know where our relationship is going. We've only been together for a short time, and it feels too soon to address that issue. That's why I don't want to leave my apartment. I want to have a place of my own to go to if things ever get complicated between us. The thing is, I've recently realized that Eric doesn't show any gratitude toward me or the apartment. Every time I call him, He makes some excuse to avoid me or lies, saying he's busy when he clearly isn't. The most annoying part is the passive-aggressive comments he makes, like, "Don't hesitate to call me if you need help," followed by a big laugh, as if it's a joke. One weekend, Eric, Lisa, and I planned a night of bowling. On the way home, I got a flat tire. I asked Eric to pick us up and take us home. He was so upset about having to drive us to Lisa's apartment that he said, "Next time, maybe check your tires before creating a problem and then calling me. And why can't you just order an Uber? I'll have to drive 15 kilometers alone." On another occasion, Lisa and I went shopping and ended up buying a chair. The shipping would take 2 days, and we were excited to have it sooner. I called Eric to ask what he was doing. He said he was in the apartment doing nothing. I asked if he could help us carry the chair. He complained, "I just did leg day yesterday. My quads hurt. Can't you ask someone else? Or maybe pay for shipping?" After many complaints, he finally showed up but acted like he was doing us a huge favor. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago when I got the flu. It hit me hard: fever, chills, stuffy nose. Lisa was working late, and I ran out of soup and ointment. I couldn't wait until she got home, so I called Eric and asked him to drop off some hot soup and medicine. I knew he was home because he had been live on Instagram just minutes earlier. To my surprise, he started complaining. "I'm very busy. Can't you ask Lisa?" I stayed calm and told him, "I'm sick. Can't you make some time for your cousin? I just asked you to bring me some medicine and hot soup. What's so complicated about that?" He almost yelled, "I'm not your nurse. Why don't you call Lisa? Isn't she supposed to take care of you?" I replied, "I'm not asking you to be a nurse. I just asked for some medicine. But it's okay if you don't want to help." Instead of feeling guilty, he said, "Yes, you should learn to deal with your own problems. I have my own to handle. I can't get you out of trouble every time." His words enraged me, but I wasn't in a position to argue. I hung up, went out, and got the supplies myself, even in that miserable state. When Lisa came home, I told her what had happened. She was furious. She said, "Why is this so one-sided? You've been helping him for the last 5 months. Do you realize everything you've done for him? You're the one paying rent for the apartment where he's resting. Don't you see that he's taking advantage of you?" She advised me to move my remaining things out of the apartment and move in with her. At first, I was hesitant for the reasons I mentioned before. It feels too early to think long-term. I told Lisa that Eric wouldn't be able to pay the rent if I moved out. She responded, "That's his problem. Put the lease in his name and tell the landlord Eric will be responsible for the rent now. He can figure out what to do." Her suggestion makes sense, but I'm not sure what the best option is. Should I move in with Lisa and leave the apartment to Eric completely? Or should I ask Eric to move out and get my apartment back? I know I sound hesitant about moving in with Lisa, and that's why I'm reluctant to make any big decisions. Do you have a better solution? Update 1. The comments on my situation have been very funny. Yes, I was stuck in a dead end, tired of maintaining Eric, not wanting to commit to living exclusively with Lisa, and also not wanting to give up my place. I wanted to play it safely. As someone commented, "You can't eat the cake and have it at the same time." So, I decided to approach the situation step by step instead of avoiding it. First, I confronted Eric about his behavior. I called him and told him that it hurt me the way he acted every time I asked for his help. He got defensive and started listing all the times he rescued me, as he put it. He mentioned instances beyond what I shared previously. For example, he brought up the time I bought a dining table for my apartment and he helped me carry it upstairs. He also reminded me of the time I forgot an important flash drive at home and he brought it to my work. I couldn't believe he was keeping track of all these things. Eric said he was upset about always having to bail me out of trouble and accused me of taking him for granted by calling him randomly for anything. That, he explained, was why he had been avoiding my calls and messages. I replied, "If you're counting every insignificant thing, then I've also done a lot for you." I reminded him of the time he dislocated his arm and had to wear a sling. I worked from home and took care of him during those 2 weeks. I drove him to his checkups and helped him with daily tasks. This was before I met Lisa. I also reminded him that I had let him live in my apartment without charging him rent, paid for his portfolio, and helped him get jobs. To my shock, he dismissed all of it, saying, "Don't act like I owe you something. That's why you offered it, remember?" I replied, I didn't offer it. You asked me for help, and I agreed to help you, which is very different. I lost my patience. It was so brazen and selfish of him to say that. He responded curtly, yes, you offered it. Mature. Before hanging up. That made me even angrier. That same afternoon, I went to the apartment like a storm and started packing my things. When I arrived, Eric barely looked up from his phone and complained, now what? Without saying a word, I pulled out boxes and began packing. He scoffed and sarcastically commented, how dramatic. Then, he quickly retreated to the bedroom, which, by the way, was mine. I still had my things in there. Instead of knocking on the door, I called my landlord and put him on speaker. I told the landlord I was vacating the apartment. I had already sent him the official 1-month notice via email. From that point on, I made it clear he was free to make a new contract with Eric or do whatever he wanted. Upon hearing this, Eric came out of the bedroom. Maybe now he realized he was in trouble. He kept asking me if I was really serious. I said, yes, every word. I went into the bedroom, took photos of my furniture, and uploaded them online to sell. His tone quickly changed, and he started asking me for some time to organize his life. I replied, you've had all the time in the world. From now on, you're on your own. I'm just tired of paying rent for a place where I don't even live. The landlord will contact you to finalize the process, and the furniture will be picked up in a few days. Instead of taking responsibility, Eric tried to flip the situation, saying I was taking things too far. His tone was irritating, especially when he tried to dissuade me by saying, please don't do this. If things don't work out with Lisa, you're going to need this place to take refuge. That was the final straw. I burst out and told him, I'll take my chances. I know how to handle my life, unlike you, who only knows how to make your problems someone else's responsibility. He stayed silent after that and followed me around as I packed my things. After much contemplation, he finally said, I didn't realize this hurt you so much.
I'm sorry.
Let's go back to how we were. I'll do better. I responded, it doesn't matter anymore. That ship has sailed. You can't treat people like trash and then expect them to help you when it's convenient for you. He put on a worried face and said, you know I can't pay the rent on my own. I need help to keep living here. The money I get from my jobs barely covers utilities and food. Ever since you started living with Lisa, I've been struggling to manage. I simply replied, well, now you're going to have to figure it out on your own. You're not my problem anymore. Remember how you told me the other day that you couldn't bail me out forever? Thanks for reminding me that I can't bail you out forever either. Eric looked like he wanted to take back everything he'd said, but there was nothing he could do to change my decision. He stood there silently. I had already booked a moving service, so while waiting for them to arrive, I started carrying lighter items downstairs. Eric offered to help, but I refused. I didn't want to add to his favor count, so I ignored him. As I carried the last box, he kept apologizing, but I didn't respond. Later, he sent me a long message apologizing again and thanking me for everything. He tried to manipulate me emotionally, saying he saw me as a role model and other cheesy things like that. I ignored the message. I've stopped falling for those tactics. I've made a leap of faith and moved forward with my life. No matter what happens in the future, I'm ready to face it with strength and determination. Update 2. It has only been 5 months since I moved, and things are already going bad for Eric. 2 weeks ago, he called me, saying that the landlord had become a pain in the ass and was chasing him for rent. I told him, it's not the landlord's fault, it's probably yours. The reason he's chasing you is that you're behind on rent. He insisted I talk to the landlord and ask him to give Eric some time. I replied, it's not my problem anymore. That apartment is your apartment now. You have a new contract with him. Deal with the consequences of your actions. A few days later, Eric showed up at our house asking for help. He said the landlord had evicted him. I asked him, what can I do about it? He was mad at how the landlord could be so cruel as to leave him homeless for being just 2 months late on rent. To justify himself, he said, I paid on time for 3 months, so the landlord should trust me and give me more time to pay off the debt. I asked him, why are you here? He said he didn't have money to get out of the situation. The funny thing was that he wanted me to worry about him. He said, how can you be so indifferent? knowing that I'm homeless and lying on the street. I laughed and replied, "Why should I care? You had 5 months to organize your life, but you didn't take it seriously. Now you want me to help you again." He begged me to talk to the landlord and buy him a week's time. I told him, "I'm not going to do that. I don't have time for your nonsense." Later, he begged me to help him get his camera and laptop back because he had an interview the next day and had pawned some of his things. He claimed to have high hopes for the interview and sounded very desperate. He promised to pay the rent as soon as he received his first paycheck. Despite his desperation, I refused to get involved in the mess. However, after he left, I called the building manager to understand the situation. The manager told me a completely different story. Apparently, Eric had been hosting parties in the apartment after I left. The loud music was bothering the neighbors, and many of them filed complaints. Eric received several warnings, but despite that, he continued with his disruptive behavior and was late with rent. Honestly, who would tolerate a tenant like that? A couple of days later, Eric called me again saying, "You don't care about anything that happens to me, right? I'm literally sleeping in the subway in this ice-cold weather every night. I feel like I won't survive until morning. I'm living on the street with homeless people. You know how dangerous it is. They even tried to rob me the other day, but I defended myself. You're just waiting for something bad to happen to me. Is that how vengeful you are?" I yelled, "No, you're a baby. You need to learn to solve your life. I've already held your hand for too long, which I regret now. It's my turn to stop being so good to you and move on with my life." He made a sarcastic comment, "Wow, this is what you do with your family?" I answered, "No. Family helps, but I also expect family to be there for me when I need them. So I asked myself that same question when you refused to help me when I was sick. I guess we're not family after all. Sometimes you have to prune." He hung up without saying anything more. Later, he contacted Lisa and asked her if he could stay with us for a week until he could raise money to pay the rent. That's how it all started with me. He came asking for space for a month, which turned into months of abusive trust. I didn't want to fall into that trap again. A week ago, he showed up at my apartment, furious. Apparently, the landlord had confiscated some of his work tools. He had also taken the rest of his clothes and shoes, packed them in a box, and thrown them in the basement. The apartment had already been rented to someone else. The building manager called Eric and gave him 2 days to retrieve his belongings, or they would be sold to cover the outstanding rent. Eric needs to learn his lesson, and he can only do this by facing the situation himself. I said, "I'm sorry to hear it, but I really can't help you." He had tears in his eyes. I could feel his pain because I know how much his camera means to him. He cleans it twice a day. I know how terrible it must feel to be separated from it. The camera and the laptop are his world, but I'm already tired of helping him. He left with a disappointed face, but he also made it clear that this was the end of our bond. That seems fine to me because the bond was me helping him and him complaining whenever I needed his help. So, it's not a bond one would like to keep. I mean, we grew up as brothers and I treated him like my little brother. But I can't let him walk all over me. At some point, I had to do something, and that moment was now. The next day, my dad called me and asked about the whole situation. Apparently, Eric went to his father, my uncle, looking for help. He told my uncle that I refused to help him despite several requests, which upset my uncle. My father, however, knows me well and refused to believe the story without hearing both sides. So, he called me, and I told him the whole situation from my perspective. He told me I did the right thing. By defending me, my uncle managed to get Eric out of trouble. He was able to retrieve his camera and laptop, but the landlord didn't want him back, and Eric couldn't afford to pay for the place anymore. The last I knew, he was sleeping on one of his friend's couches and had taken a job under a local wedding photographer. I feel good for him, and also for myself. I have learned that helping someone does not mean allowing them to take advantage of you, and that I should have stopped all this much sooner. Update 3. I've received so many questions about my cousin, and apparently, people are interested in what has happened to him in recent months. I thought it would be fun to spend the Sunday afternoon writing this update. People have also asked me about how life is going with my girlfriend, Lisa. Well, it has been better than I expected, and I must say I've been a fool for not moving in with her sooner. There are so many things I need to change, but since I've started therapy, I'll probably work on those things and much more. For example, I've realized how foolish it was to let my cousin abuse my trust for so long. And before you ask, yes, Lisa and I split the expenses. I pay half the rent and also cover my share of other living costs. I've made a conscious decision not to become like my cousin. At least, I think I've been improving because another cousin, on the other side of the family, recently asked me to stay in the apartment I share with Lisa for a few weeks. I told him no. I don't know if this cousin would turn out like the first one, but I don't want to risk going through the same ordeal again, not to mention the problems it would cause in my relationship with Lisa. As for my infamous cousin, whom everyone is curious about, he's now working as a loader and unloader at a warehouse. That's his current job. In my last update, he was assisting a wedding photographer. But that didn't turn out well at all. Apparently, he refused to contribute properly to the work and drank alcohol during weddings. When he got fired from that job, he ran to my uncle, crying about how his life, career, and dreams were ruined just because he had a few drinks during work. Honestly, I've never seen a wedding photographer behave like a guest, unless, of course, they are an invited guest taking casual pictures. If someone is paying you, you need to be professional. My uncle shared this incident with my father, who then told me, and now I'm sharing it with you. Gossip flies quickly in the family. Another notable update is that my cousin sold all his equipment, or at least what he still owned, and got a job. He has been hopping from one job to another, but from what I know, the warehouse job is where he's lasted the longest. Some people in the family think he sold his equipment because he had nowhere to live and desperately needed the money. Supposedly, even the friend who let him crash on their sofa got tired of him eventually. The most surreal part is that, for a while, my cousin was dating a girl. I don't know exactly how long they were together, but it all ended due to, surprise, a housing issue. It turns out my cousin was planning to move in with her. I don't know if she knew what happened between him and me or with his previous living arrangements, or if she just saw red flags that I had overlooked. But she told him she wasn't ready for him to move in with her. Eventually, they broke up. His excuse to the family was that women today aren't prepared for commitment. According to him, he's a good catch, but no woman wants to take the next step and settle down. Even my uncle, who had met the woman and tried to give my cousin the benefit of the doubt, realized this wasn't true. It's clear my cousin was angling for a new place to live, and that's why he was so eager to take the next step, in quotes. I saw him briefly at a family gathering when we both returned to our hometown. We exchanged a polite greeting, but that's it. I don't think we need to say much more to each other than that.